Chokecherry Gall Eagle. And like I say, his book really helped me. In the 90s, I was going through really lots of absolute challenges and all kinds of difficulties. And I went into a bookstore searching for a book somebody told me that might give me answers. And his book just had come out. And I walked in and this energy just pulled me. So I went and looked at the book. Went, I'm trying to find something else. Maybe one day I'll buy this. And I searched the whole bookstore, couldn't find what I want, yet this energy kept pulling me to this book. So I went over there, picked it up, just glanced through it a little bit. And so I ended up buying it. And I brought it home. And there was things in it that really helped me in all kinds of ways. So this is where seeing from somebody else's eyes, where they discovered the truth, where they did the work. Jesus did the work. He was trying to share with everybody, but they took all the truth out of the Bible. They didn't want you to understand what he was teaching and doing or what he taught the apostles or whatever. They just kept taking it apart so you would never realize and become him. And Chokecherry Gall Eagle is comparing native ceremonies with some of the Christian stuff, and he's trying to help you to see in the natives we do this, but we do it in a little bit of a different way. We have names and practices and other kinds of things that make it different. And I always use the word qi because everybody hears the word qi and knows in Chinese medicine that is like a soul, a power, energy within a person's body. But if my granddad was sitting there and you told him, I'm going to work with qi, he's going to laugh at you because in my language, qi means a mosquito. And so words are different. Practices are different. Doesn't mean they're wrong. Some take longer, some are faster. And this is where Chokecherry Gall Eagle, like, he trained under Frank Foolscrow, a Sioux medicine man, a man people knew as a holy man. He could do all kinds of things. And before he died, he was told by Spirit to make sure that he wrote books and gave it to the world. And those books are there. Anybody can read on Uwepi. Anybody can read on, and he shared all the knowledge. There's no secret. People try to say it's their power. He says it's nobody's power. There's only one power, the Creator. And this is where we're all fighting and destroying one another. We're in that end times, that collapse of everything, because that's going to push us into the age of Aquarius, and we're going to change everything. Good morning, everybody. 7. Stone is perception, a hue of consciousness. Different stones represent different hues of consciousness or medicine dreams. You may hear about circles of stone all around North America. There are thousands. If you count teepee rings, in older times stones were sometimes used to hold down the edge of the teepee. Some stone circles are altars and so-called medicine wheels. There is a lot of interest now in different kinds of stone crystals. This reflects people's interest and yearning to understand consciousness and perception. One sees more than art and craft works with stones and crystals on them. In older times, this was not done. This is a new thing. Many stone altars are not wheels at all. One is a giant turtle, another is a large circle with a spiral path in it. Before you can put stones together into a fasting circle, you should have taken actually journeys and encountered fundamental consciousness. This does not mean sleep dreams. Before you even help to make a stone altar, you must be a master of at least one way. Before that, you are not attained enough. Before that, you have not attained enough and would only be assembling your illusion in a place where they can harm others. That energy needs to be purified out. Some people are putting together their body center as they approach the balance of the fire teachings, and mistakenly think they are putting together their inner medicine wheel. This is not so. They have encountered the outer wheel of the altar, but since it is all that mankind can encompass from the mortal limitations, they mistakenly believe they are putting together the wheel. Stone is perception, a hue of consciousness. The medicine altars have different shapes for reasons. They each have different reasons for being. Each stone can be said to reflect the present, a reflection of one power. The conscious or medicine is associated with the stone, but it is not in it. We say that if you enter the altar in a straight way, you will perceive things. When you enter the state between manifestation and ethereal realms, you perceive things. You can understand how the parts relate because you have experienced the whole. Before going to the center, I wonder about the symbols. Gradually I understood more. I went to the medicine altar in Saskatchewan. It had just been returned to the native possession, and the keepers wondered how I knew about it. I said I needed to pray there, and they guided me to it. It was a very large circle with central cairn and 5 spokes. It is more than twice as large as the famous medicine wheel in Wyoming. I made ceremony and entered the wheel. I realized right away that something was wrong. I looked around and I found out that while it was in non-native possession, the central cairn had been dug up and the sacred offerings removed. They sat in the museum in drawers somewhere. I simply left, for it is no longer a whole thing and is a distortion of its original purpose. This happens often. Now that the non-native world is also getting interested in mystics, it's too late for many of the sacred ways. They are already gone. Hardly any stone altars is left undisturbed. When my wife fasted in a circle of stones, she collected them from special places. We carried them up the mountain. That is fine. She is qualified for that because she reached fundamental perception. But if you can clear your mind and enter true balance, your circle is one of pure perception and consciousness. It is the real old way. The world, your fasting circle, marked by the horizon, directions along the horizon. You are the center of the great circle of mystery and life. Grandeur surrounds you. You might decide with intellect that you want to fast 4 days a night. So what happens if you get an answer to your question right away? This happened to me once. I had made my circle and began to pray when I was told something and advised to go back down from the physical heights of the mountain and the heights of consciousness. I stayed because I wanted to fulfill my vow. A small butterfly darted before me. When it knew it had my attention, it flew around behind me. A terrific blow struck my back, shoving me forward several feet. I spun around and there was only a tiny butterfly hovering. It struck me again and it gathered my things and left. I later found out there was somewhere I should be the next morning, and that I could not have been there if I stayed fasting. I can't stress enough that if you follow custom and ritual only in the outer form of having things, you will not get very far. If you have the inner traditional awareness or mystical centerings, you do not need things. It is true that the path of ritual is rather secure, but the attractiveness of having a sense of belonging and using sacred things can be detrimental to higher transcendence. We entered ritual and ritualistic objects, but once we have established ourselves in the consciousness, we should be able to go beyond needing these things. Can you imagine being in need, but feeling helpless because you do not have your rattle with you? Ritual can help open us up. All these magic objects open the door for us, or do they? When I stayed with Grandpa Foolscrow, he used a ritual or not, depending upon the circumstances. Uncle Mark said if you have to sweat or pray or even vision quest and you do not have a pipe, never mind. As long as your heart is good, The Spirit hears you. What you should understand is this: development. Following a path is to grow in awareness through perception and elevated consciousness. This generated light. Native always are a system. They are giving to a group of people. They are sacred ways, but only one system is a sacred way. There are other systems, religions. Each way focuses on a slightly different aspect of the total knowledge. Some ways contain more of the wholeness of life, and they encompass more knowledge than some others. When a person becomes knowledgeable, he or she is faced with a problem of translating that inner knowledge into a coherent form that less knowledgeable people can grasp. Usually cultural context is used and deepened symbolisms. Not having had the experience, you do not really know. So the sage or mystic describes how he came to transcend. He describes how it felt, what he saw, how his concept of self and world change. This creates a picture of attainment. Attainment is really a process. It is a change of perception as consciousness is elevated or speeded up. When we recognize that the horizon marks a boundary and that we are standing at the center of all points in the horizon, this fits perfectly with other understandings, and so we create symbolisms. Each part of our experience could be put into symbols. Ultimately, we could end up with a system of dogged down by symbols that few could grasp them all to form a coherent understanding of attainment and the whole. By studying the symbols and how they interrelate, some try to transcend for themselves. This is a system, a way, a path, a walk through life's mysteries. And it says here, there is no way, there is no path, there is no toe, there is no red road. There is only the black road. And I believe that. And I've been saying from way over 30 years I walk the black road. Good morning, everybody. There are words to describe something inside us reflecting to and from the world around us. The truth is indescribable. Nothing more can be said about it than that. Yet we manage to find thousands of words or something we all know deep inside us, if we could but uncover the inner self. I will have to use symbols again, see what the problem it is. We say that there are 4 directions. These are said to correspond to 4 parts of self. The west is the spirit, the north is the mind, the east is the body, the south is the heart. We say that we must balance these parts of ourselves. This is a process. It is a perception that we learn. We say that we have a manifest realm and the body life in the realm. We say that we have the dream realm, the mental realm. We have the centered and the loving warmth of participating fully with nature. If we have these different aspects of self, we can logically understand that spirit is not created at the moment that we first perceive it from body states. Our own spirit must already exist on its own realm. In fact, it is the familiar still, small voice we speak of, guiding us to embrace our own spiritual self. Our own spirit leading the body levels to realization. For everyone does have our own, very own guardian angels watching over them. It is our very own spiritual self gently guiding us to realize its presence. To feel the full sensation of body level is one perception. To perceive that we can act with violation in lucid dreams is one perception. To know that we can use powers from the manifest when we enter spiritual awareness is one perception. We know there is a core of awareness underlying all of these one perceptions. These are the first 4 stones we place in the sweat lodge. In the sweat lodge pit for the 4 directions and 4 parts of self, the simplest medicine wheel. We call it growth, to change perception and elevate consciousness. Now then, we ask, is it that the trick of all of this is to change perception? Yes, that is pretty much the trick. In symbolic terms, it is to move from one stone to the next in the medicine wheel as you learn. Eventually, you learn different perceptions and arrive at the center. In the end, you look back and you know it was all stone no matter where you stood within the wheel. It takes most of the lifetime to truly understand. These stones are all perception, different hues of consciousness, and so, having all of these parts to the whole being, we cannot let the manifest level dominate the total being. We should also try to become more spiritual aware while enjoying our brief time of body life. How someone changes perception begins with feelings. When I conduct ceremony, I begin changing my mood and feelings. I feel a positive certainty without being certain of any one thing. It is a very calm thing. Music also changes our mood and feeling, so we should be careful what music we listen to. If you sing the sacred songs of the four winds, it invokes a certain mood through to the tone and the words. It changes feelings to the prescribed perception. If you sing the sacred pipe song, it changes feelings to a different prescribed perception. Each time, feeling helps us to change perception and elevate consciousness. In all ceremonies, perception changes and indicates the consciousness has changed. And how and why of the change are what we call the different medicines. All the rituals and objects were designed to aid us in learning to change perceptions of consciousness. So the red road is not a concrete thing, as a product, or an end in itself. It is not real. Some people treat it as a thing with concrete substance, like an interstate highway. It is a set of words to describe our changes of perception and consciousness. Thus, the red road and all ways are not real things in themselves, but hues of the same conscious permeating all of creation. As you ask good medicine people, they will tell you that native ways are but one system among many. Many cultures do not understand their own ways, so they begin to turn to native ways. It has been said that native people should teach the world. This is so, but no one said to convert the world to native ways. It was said, be honest about native ways. People will understand more the truth of life, including their own ways, previously not understood. It should not even be debated which way holds which amount of truth. There is an underlying grain of truth in all religions, which exact grains various long ago mystic focused their teachings on gives rise to the difference in religions today. We cannot discern the distinctions from the darkness of the mortal mind. Symbols are like the paint that we use to cover something. If I want to tell you about my car, I say the paint is blue. Now you picture a blue car. Ah, but it is light blue car. Now you picture that. But it is a light blue car with a white roof. Now you imagine that. I want to tell you about centering. So I use the directions in the four parts of self. I talk about teaching and wholeness. I still own a blue car with a white roof, but the descriptions get more and more detailed. Eventually, you can know an awful lot about my car, but to really know it, you must see it and drive it yourself. Centering is that way. You can read about it, hear about it, but you have to do it to really know. Something about driving my car cannot be put into words. You can come to form a mood about transcendence. Once you formulate a mood, your inner feelings are drawn in the right way, and perceptions begin to change. Maybe you even transcend. So what are symbols but descriptive words and objects to help us change levels of consciousness and perception? So we have this manifest world. Every lasting action phenomena can be seen as symbolic. What a flood of information. This is the flood of Noah. Noah took with him male, female, and each creature and sailed over the turbulent waters. I believe the flood happened physically. It is symbolical at the same time. Ceremony is like that, literally true and symbolically true as well. Symbolically could also be expressed as conveying significance. Deep mystical events are like that. Noah made wine, took off all his clothes, and sat drunk in his tent, unaware of the world. This means that he acquired the ability to go beyond his body limitations, for this is what wine represents. He removed the clothing that represent customs and traditions of his people before the flood. He was naked without custom and tradition. He sat in the tent of his sheltering reality and went beyond. The ability to transcend body limitation is a symbolic wine of Christianity. So Jesus turned water of wholeness and oneness into wine of the ability to go beyond, by placing it into stone pots of fundamental perception. He later said that the wine was his very blood, the stuff of life to him. And to the person who overcomes the world is given white stone and a white robe, and their name is written in the light forever in heaven. When we begin to understand, we form a coherent picture of the whole and transcend. Mellowed earth prepared for the seed of light. Jesus talked about the seed falling on hard and mellowed earth. All of these symbols can lead us somewhere. In the end, we will find that there is only one direction, the one in which we face. We will find that there is no above and below, except as separate by perception. We will find that there are no parts of self, but one whole self, merely separated into different levels of perception. I was thinking about symbols before Mary died. She told me when her death would be. She pointed out particular people to me. She said that they were old-time, good-hearted people. She also said that when the last of these people die, please leave the res, as it would get very bad for a while. I used to be universal known that when camping, native made a very small fire. We sat very close to it. Non-natives made a very large and sat far from it. First of all, this means that native people were much more in tune with the natural world and feared it very little, if at all. They did not need to push back the dark and fearsome night because they were warmed by the inner participation in the spirit in all things. Non-natives, out of touch with the natural world and spirit, threw more wood on the fire. In emotions, native people of strong heart build a small fire, but sit very close to it. We sat in touch with the warm heart feelings. Old-time native people were not emotional, but very passionate through heart. Non-natives often build a very large fire of emotions and ego demands and sit far away from the heart feeling. Today, young people of all races seem to build the largest fires of all. Today, fewer people understand living by a small fire. It is the second fire teachings. It brings the purification represented by the driving snow in the youthful experiences. This relates directly to understanding your place in the cosmos. If you build a large fire to push back the fearsome darkness, you're really trying to push back the fear of facing the ultimate solitude of your mortal conditions. You feel alone, vulnerable, and perhaps small in overall patterns of life. If you are centered and at peace in the universe, you need only a tiny fire, and you sit close to it. You need to be less emotional in life, but your passions run deep, strong, and clear. They are heartfelt truths, but your direction or your direct relationship to the universe and your place in it. You are at home everywhere, alone perhaps, but never lonely, even in death, the final change that we recognize from mortal limits. You are at peace because you are going home to the spirit center. In older times, fire was not the roaring thing, but no one froze to death. That was all we needed then. There are times to build a large fire, the fire to heat the stones, for the sweat lodge must be large. This means that we need our intensity to be able to transcend. But we recall our hearts always. The true warrior that I talk about lives by the heart, knows his heart, and will die by the heart. If you live and die by your heart, you are living and dying by your personal truth, or truth of existence. How can you not be at peace then? These are some more truths about fire. As far as knowledge goes, it is something sacred to know about fire. Fire touches all our lives. We respect not only those who make their fires in the right way, but we also respect those who can make a much hotter fire from the same material we would use. Their fire always seems to get the stones hotter faster. This is knowledge of fire. Unfortunately, there are a lot of so-called medicine men who cannot even start a fire. They pour gasoline, kerosene, use motor oil on the wood. Then they stand back and toss light matches at it. They try to have you believe that they have knowledge. Likewise, they accept gifts and even get their helpers to suggest money and gift giving to you. Most religious ways through the ages have had their pretenders. Somehow, you will feel which are real. Listen to your heart. Judge them by your heart. This is what Uncle Mark meant when he said, you can have ceremony even without the sacred pipe. Live by the heart. If you live by the heart, the warmth eases the darkness of the human solitude. You might well ask if development growth is a matter of changing perception and consciousness, then what makes living by the heart better than any other perception? Good question. Living by the heart generates warmth and thus light, and thus eases us into embracing more of the whole. Ego closes consciousness and shrinks the field of perception. Upon dying, we each will change consciousness. We can expand consciousness and embrace more the whole. So it is spiritual living to live by heart. We will go to a better place. When we die, the conscious opens. We can weigh ourselves, our own life acts against the standards of the whole. If we have lived some degrees of truth and have a strong, good heart and transition is smoother, we freely embrace light and spirit. When we are confronted with the truth of oneness of the all things, the Holy Spirit, we realize the improper manners we may have lived in. At this time, past errors can come to our awareness and we see them clearly. It is not that our entire life flashes before our eyes, but the grave errors against the light becomes clear to us. Jesus called these sins against the Holy Spirit. When faced with such acts, we do indeed feel a burning, much like moments of embarrassed humiliation we can feel in the body, but it is much more intense and agonizing. This is the cleansing fire that can burn away within us. During body life, the mystic goes through this. He or she gets cleansed and purified along the way. Others encounter it only in death. Because we touch the spirit in all things, however briefly in death, we can try to make this a more fluid thing by living more spiritually. We will become lucid and aware in death as we are balanced between the fading manifest world and suddenly illuminated ethereal realms of spiritual being. The center is the mind point between mortal human awareness and spiritual beings. If we live more balanced and centered, we are more in touch with the spiritual realm, yet we can fully enjoy our physical nature. The mystics carry this learning so far that some drop bodies and travel through this midpoint between realms of spheres of light. It is pure awareness that we perceive as light. Light is awareness. The road to generate light is through the fire teachings. When I was very young, I constantly demanded that Uncle Mark, why could I not come home to the reservation to live? Why was I living in a dominant society? He always said, one day I'll explain when you are older. One day he replied, if I tell people, they won't understand me. You will find the right words to use. If you asked Uncle Mark what was the truth of existence, the right way to live, the power is that spirits do almost any question. Do uh, what power is, what spirits do almost any question. He would have said, live by heart. From this statement, you are supposed to be able to figure all of this out yourself. You ponder, strive, and quest until you know. This is traditional attitude. If you ask Grandpa Foolscrow about medicine, life, spiritual vision, and the pipe, anything at all, he most likely would have told you to go Sundance. What he would have meant is that if you spend several years learning native philosophy and language, begin to go to sweat lodges, and learn its truth for several years or decades, and eventually vision quest several times over the course of your years, you might one day Sundance to pierce the realms. After piercing the different levels, you might understand these things one day. People hear the words, and in 2 months they go several times to a sweat fast one night, and the following week Sundance. They will have learned little in that time. When you sweat, you are told to pray hard. All the implications of fire, emotions, spirit centerings are supposed to be gradually understood through this. The traditional mind understands the implications. The non-traditional mind hears only words. Some natives have non-traditional minds. Spiritual language is both factual and symbolic at the same time. If I advise that certain objects be thrown into a fast river just before it empties into the ocean while praying intensely, I meant this literally as the ceremony. I also meant that healing medicine to remove the bad medicine would be to cross to the other realm of spirit, almost to the water's oneness while praying, and the bad medicine would be cast into the void, never to be returned. This is done from body. Because the symbolic values and literal facts match the ceremony, one cannot just make up a ceremony using only the brain to invent a ceremony while bringing only confusion. Brain is only part of the whole being. During ceremony, it is clear of activity. So how can you think up a ceremony? Everything is creation. Every action and series of actions, all weather phenomena, are seen to have inherent meaning. Inherent meaning. During ceremony, this meaning is truth. The man who first took me to the sweat lodges advised me, you can get too caught up in the meanings of everything. So try to see the meaning of everything. Even go to the bathroom. You have to get back out of that and just live your own life. I went to visit a friend who has a nature school. His helpers and advanced students approached me during the visit. They said they feared their teacher was bothered by bad medicine. They said there were some bone artifacts which they believe had bad medicine in them. They asked if I would take the bones into the nearby woods and bury them at the foot of the oak tree. I simply refused. As far as I was concerned, the matter was closed. They did not even bring any tobacco for the spirits. They asked me twice, which is also improper behavior. They asked me what I would do with those things to get rid of them. I said that I would throw them in a fast river just before it emptied into the ocean, while praying all the while. They said, but our teacher says oak is the strongest tree and will absorb all bad things. We don't understand. I replied in true traditional fashion and said, I know you don't understand, and walked away. If I wrote from my inner native self, this whole book would be like that. But I have non-native side to my being as well. I write to try and explain traditional concepts in a way conducive to the European American understandings. Number 8, medicine and ritual are old, or sorry, when I'm seeing old, it's aid. Medicine and ritual are an aid. Medicine and ritual are an aid. Development realizes that we are focusing on the material world and the fixation must be eventually transcended. This is a basic assumption made freely. We know that to break the barriers and mortal perception, seeing only what is affecting us while embodied, we can use ritual to help open us up. It is said that it takes at least 30 years to learn native religion. Then we begin to understand life and spirit. For this reason, we do not expect anyone to be spiritually mature until they are in their 50s, 60s, and 70s. A few who start early might have begin to understand in their 40s, if they had done almost nothing else in life but seek spirituality. Just because a person is in their 50s and 60s does not mean they have purified themselves, adequately purified themselves. You notice a man in his 60s who has a large following and many helpers. This does not mean he is holy, just popular. He might even be a fame-seeking egoistic who wants a lot of recognition and gifts. It is widely known that one can go beyond the need of ritual. It is not talked about a lot, but it is known. If someone has transcended, traveled beyond the body realm, divided consciousness, affected cures, that person begins to do things more and more without ritual. Sometimes you encounter someone who, as a part of learning process, does some things without ritual or ritualistic ceremony. As he grows older and becomes stable in spiritual awareness, the ability to exhibit earlier will come through again. Just because he did something without ceremony when young does not mean that he can always do so. When he is mature spiritually, he likely will do so. Some young men under 40 do conduct their own sweats and even put themselves into a fasting circle. They transcend and they go off alone to fast. They are guided by spirit. This is more similar to the way that Jesus taught. He said that his followers should be more like him. He went alone into the wilderness to fast, climbed mountains alone to pray. In the native way, it's more usual to seek the guidance of an elder. It is said, for instance, that if Fugro agreed to help you fast, you would have a strong experience. His prayers would ensure that you had a strong experience. People seem not to realize that this about leaving ritual behind. Some people say they will use the pipe until the day they die. Well, that is not even the point. The pipe is also something to get beyond. When I asked if I might have a long stem pipe, Uncle Mark told me to learn it for 7 years, then begin to set it aside. If you can acquire the consciousness intended, you will not always need the pipe. To be a free man means also to be freed from these things. A lot of the people do not realize when you go, holy man, he is only making a ritual ceremony for your benefit. He doesn't need it. It helps you to open up. He is already open. When you carry your pipe into the natural areas with the intention of making ceremony, you have already created the mood. Through your intent, each step helps you to feel that you are drawing near to the place where manifestation and eternal meets. You think it is because of the pipe is holy and has also awesome power. It is true that objects can have natural energies augmented by holy man's prayers, but primarily the opening is within us. We can perceive that the pipe opens us up. The pipe or ritual is a buffer zone. If we did these things without the pipe, we would have to face the truth. The eternal is always there. Spiritual consciousness is always within each. We can feel ceremonial consciousness anytime we choose to do so through changing perceptions and feelings. To keep these realizations from crashing in on us and disrupting our physical life, we have a buffer zone in consciousness, a limit to mortal awareness. There is not one thing that I have yet encountered in ritual, song, or ceremony, or tradition that I did not first experience under the guidance of my teacher without the objects or rituals. There was nothing new for me in Sundance ceremony, but a cumbersome enactment of going to the center. I have never thought that I am an unusual person. I have thought it is unusual world that needs these things and fears their own spiritual selves. Anyone learning about light will leave behind what they once knew. You will discover new things. Jesus also said to be in the world, but not of the world. I used to feel sorry for some of the old men of power. I knew they had to live in a certain way, and I wondered if they ever missed doing some of the things other men did. But it was their choice, accepted in youth as a lifelong commitment. Being a mystic is for life and beyond. I was startled to discover the old man felt compassion for me, still having to deal with emotions and thought. They encouraged me to live by heart feelings instead, a different perspective. Sometimes when a young man goes on a fast, he particularly demands a vision. The old men beg for compassion, for that their sacrifice might benefit the people. It is a different perspective. We each learn about fire and stone in our own way. We learn about light and consciousness. The difference between path is perspective, the direction we view from, and the hue of consciousness, medicine powers. It is still all consciousness and light. The difference between native ways and Christianity or Shinto is perspective. The underlying fundaments of human consciousness and perception are the gut rock underlying all religious ways. They are stones of dreams. The fire teachings are ways through the manifest to live a good life in a heart, warmth, and light, slowly uncovering spiritual abilities as you grow through the years. Everything is perception and level of consciousness. The opening of awareness is to generate light. We should recall the medicines are an aid. When we see the traditional person who carries a hawk-wing fan, we can safely assume that he knows something about hawk medicine. The sacred object tells us about the medicine way of the person. These are things that help the person to change perceptions and conscious, to draw closer to ethereal awareness. I see non-natives carrying the owl wing fan. They get one somewhere and they just start using it. They buy the drum and they try to conduct ceremonies in sweats. They tell people they apprentice for 2 years with the medicine man and that they are now all medicine men. There is no apprenticeship, as the white word means. The man has a vision or an experience that might seek a guidance and advice of older, more experienced people. Once in a while, one has a vision of someone they should help for a while. I have walked up to complete strangers and handed them an eagle feather because of a vision. They always say what I said when I got my first feather. How did you know to give it to me? Where did the feather come from exactly? When non-natives attend the sweat and then think they can now conduct ceremony, it is just silly. There is this proprietary attitude towards native things. One would not think of dressing up like the Pope, making a staff and a robe like his, and leading a Easter Mass. Yet people buy native things and think this qualifies them to conduct ceremony. People of this time are seeking and have it to start somewhere. I will tell you something. I had a sweat with several young men. During the sweat, 2 owls landed above the lodge and began hooting and screeching. As I was in ceremonial consciousness, I understood them. They said that 2 old men were very close to me, were going to die soon. I asked who. They said one was Uncle Mark. They told me that he knew already and chose to die. The other old man was my parental grandfather. He was in his 90s, but very fit. I asked what could be done to keep them here. The owl said nothing. I asked about fasting, Sundance, ceremony offerings, and much more. The owl said nothing would help. I was being told so I could be prepared. Finally, in desperation, I started to think of unorthodox things that were still in keeping with the whole. I asked if the owls could take their place. The grandfathers who were talking to me through the physical owl were shocked. They thought I meant them. I clarified it, saying the physical owls could volunteer to take their place, and for this go completely into the spirit realm. After a moment, the grandfather said that the one owl would take my grandfather's place, but Uncle Mark was definitely going and chose to go in this manner. The physical owl then spoke, saying, "When you find my body in the morning, you'll know that it is so." The grandfather said my own grandfather was going to have a major stroke and would still have it, but he would survive. The next morning we got up early to go to the reservation about 100 miles away. Just after starting off, I spotted a dead owl on the side of the road. Not one feather was... I better move that. So, not one feather was ruffled with the owl, and there were no wounds of any kind. The body was warm despite the early morning dew everywhere else. It looked like it had just laid down and died. It had died just moments before we found it. I gave tobacco and prayed. Then I asked if I would be allowed to take any part of the body for ceremonial use. I would never assume, even after the powerful event, that I could just do what I wanted. I was shown that to take and make a fan from the tail feathers. The tail gives stability to the bird in flight. This is how I came to use an owl tail fan in ceremony. I did not just shoot the owl, make a fan. That would not be right. I was living with Fool's Crow when Uncle Mark died. We went to his wake together. Shortly after that, I got word that my grandfather had a major stroke and was not expected to live. He could not move. Spit ran down his chin, and he lost all his English. I told Fool's Crow, and after a brief consultation, I informed him that I was going to sweat. He gravely nodded assent. In the sweat, just after I started praying for grandfather, I saw a vision of an owl above my own sweat. I knew my grandfather would be okay no matter what the physician said. 2 weeks later, he was walking, talking, and doing his gardening. The physician said it was a medical miracle. I knew better. It was the owls and the grandfathers. But like I said, I do not have anything anymore. I have no pipe, drum, rattle, buffalo horn, dipper, or fan. Bad medicine people try to put curses on them, and so-called chiefs even try to steal them. They thought they could get power from them. I loaned my fan to a hereditary chief once, and he said it was so good he was just keeping it. He refused to return it. I had to barge into his bedroom and demand it back. I had trusted him until then. When I accepted Fool's Crow invitation to come live with him for 4 seasons, his stepson told me, "Some bad people are jealous of the old man. They want to sell mining leases and make money off tribal land, and he won't let them ruin the land. They can't hurt him because he is too powerful, but if you stay here, they might take it out on you. You might end up crippled or even dead. There are some bad people around." I will tell you about this bad medicine. It is when someone else imposes a consciousness or a perception on you. It may be the consciousness of a dying person, and then you are ill. They mess with your awareness, feelings, energy. They might only know that in the spirit realm they make medicine against you. But this is what it boils down to. To combat bad medicine, you must realize that it is a consciousness put on you. It is not in you. You must reach deep into your inner consciousness and centering to simply throw it off you. It is not easy, but this can be done. It is like having a foul, smelly blanket thrown over you. If you give into it, it wears you down. If you can throw it off, the fresh air soon revives you. You could be made to perceive the countless powerful enemies are about to corner you. This has been done to some people to make them leave the res. You must have a fundamental consciousness to reach to. A strong belief is not enough. It must be a truth of existence. If you cannot do this, use conventional medicine ways and seek aid from a holy man. When I stayed with Grandpa Foolscrow, people came from other states and countries to help. Some came from Germany, Australia, France, Italy, and even Japan. They had heard of his honest reputation. Every family used to keep herbs on hand, but sought to help for major problems by consulting holy men. We each will encounter our own medicine if we follow the native way. We will be fascinated by them for a time. We will encounter different levels of consciousness and be absorbed by the content rather than the nature of the experience. Eventually, we become more stable in spiritual awareness and might even go beyond the end of rituals. We should recognize the overall pattern because one day it can be fulfilled in us. It is normal in the native way to use these things, but newcomers do not seem to understand that we can get beyond them. It is a stage of learning. It is true that not all native people are called to go all the way. This is the same in any way. But we should know the possibility exists. I said 30 years is about the shortest time it takes to understand native ways. It might take some 50, 60 years at the time. A person might slowly begin the process of assembling their medicine wheel. This can take quite a while. This means taking all of their knowledge and experience and making a coherent understanding of life, spirit, and light. So when non-native in their 20s say that they are putting together their inner medicine wheel, they are mistaken. They have found their body center, which led them to the outer circle of harmony in the wheel. They have not yet encountered the spokes or certain central care. Generally, it is after the minimum of 30 years learning that someone had begun to realize stable spiritual awareness. It might happen intermittently before then, and they do not need ritualistic ceremony. In the Christian way, this happens soon. There are few things in what Jesus taught that could be considered ritualistic at all. Jesus enacted truths. He did not teach a set of traditional rituals. To heal a man of blindness, he spit on some soil and rubbed it into the man's eyes. Then he told the man to wash in a certain fountain. This is an enactment based upon knowledge of the spiritual meanings. It was ceremonial consciousness, but not a ceremony per se. I was taught that in the way of Jesus, it takes about 20 years to learn about life, light, and spirit. The wondrous thing about Jesus as a man is that practically on the day he finished his 20-year walk, he began to prepare for his death. He allowed himself to be killed to accomplish his work. He had started his walk when he went to Jerusalem and talked to the elders. I will talk about his first public miracle. When he turned water into wine, why did he not just make it so? He instructed the servers to fill stone pots with water. When they tasted it, it was the finest wine. What makes this an enactment is that when the water of fluid, oneness, and wholeness are placed into a receptacle of fundamental perception, the wine of the ability to transcend is the result. This is why Jesus did not just make it so, because he wished to demonstrate ceremonial enactment inherent in several ethereal meanings. Having learned native ways since childhood, I cannot help but notice that in the biblical story where the 6 stone pots corresponding to the 4 directions, the above and the below realms, these are the 6 grandfathers we speak of. Each grandfather represents mastery over one direction. This is an enactment of cosmic meaning. It is a ceremonial enactment, but churches have tried to make the ritual of it anyways related to the Last Supper. They say that the wine is turned into blood of Jesus during Mass. The symbol should be water turned to wine. Churches might get drunk on the wine, but not go beyond. They do not teach transcendence. You see, Jesus was also a man with a manifest body, like every human being. He had to balance the physical and the ethereal realms. This is centering. He was born with raised consciousness, but still had a body realm to deal with. As a man, he fasted alone, prayed, and sought development. He did not come to erase sins from the world. He taught how he could be accepted back into the spirit and sin no more. He taught enlightenment and the use of mystic consciousness. But he has been made into the unapproachable God thing that we can only fear or marvel at. By doing this to Jesus, the man churches have effectively blocked us from ever daring to finish our learning and be on the same level as the teacher. This is exactly opposite of what he taught. Jesus bled when he was wounded. He ate. He went to the bathroom. He had a normal life born of woman. I have told you that I had a vision when I was young. I was dying and I went to the mountaintop. Someone came and talked to me. It was Jesus. Jesus in my vision had darkish hair and a strong straight nose. He had a beard, and authority about him was not to be mistaken. I wanted to revere him, but he would not let me. He said that was not why he came into flesh. I asked many questions and received answers. I asked what his life was really all about, and he said that he came to teach the world that people could transcend. So he was born in the physical side to deal with. He said it was foreordained that the world would not understand this necessitate his return. I asked when that would be, and he said soon. In spiritual time, soon can be 100 years. He said when he returns, it will not be like anything anyone could imagine, not even mystics. I asked him, if he was born in flesh and was so holy, what was his true nature then? As a reply, he changed consciousness. His face became aglow, then radiated the brightest white light I could imagine, and then brighter than I could imagine. I had to turn away, not because of physical brilliance, but because of the purity of the spirit it represented. The light grew until it obscured his body, and that is when I turned away. I knew when it stopped, because I could feel a change in consciousness. I understand this properly. It took me about 20 years. It was not until I flew as a sphere of light myself that I could begin to understand this. When we fly as spheres of light, the colors of light, the hues and the colors indicate the level and kindness of awareness we have. It reflects the nature of our learning way. If a sphere is most scarlet, it can mean the man is one of great power with the intensity of fire. For Jesus to be pure white light means that his consciousness and devotion to spirit are the purest there can be, and the oneness he reached with spirit is perfect. For Jesus to transfigure in the body realm into his light self bespeaks the unimaginable power. While he was in body, the two realms were fully as one to him. It is not that he could dwell at the center of the two realms, but was always in both at the same time. He was completely aware of the body. I have seen powerful things through the years, but this boggles my mind. It is far beyond flying as a sphere of light, as we might think flying as a sphere is beyond the physical. I believe this is how I came back into the body life. The power would be sufficient to burn his image into a burial shroud. I had never heard of the Shroud of Turin when I was 12, but the Jesus in my vision looked just like the picture I later saw in the shroud. The power would be enough to baffle any scientific test we could devise. I asked Jesus if he ever appeared to people in daily life. He said never. but he said that he does meet people at the top of the mountain. He said that he talked to people and they go back down from the mountain. In later years, after going to the center, I understood the symbology. The top of the mountain is the highest we can go while maintaining touch with body life. When old native people are getting ready to die, they say they are climbing the mountain. This means that they are getting less aware in the physical, more aware in the spirit realm. It means that people with near-death experiences are symbolically atop the mountain and there meet Jesus. I believe those accounts because I saw dying of phenomena when I had my vision. In my own vision, it was Jesus who taught me how to go beyond the top of the mountain and, more importantly, how to return. I traveled to the upper levels of clouds. There I found a council of elders. They asked me how I came to be there and why I was there. I told them that Jesus told me how to get there, and they were immensely pleased. I asked them if they were native elders, why were they so happy about Jesus? They said only Jesus enters the spirit realm through the east. That is also in the Bible. Through his life, he earned a unique place in the cosmos. They said each way has a realm in the spirit world for its followers to go to. Jesus also said he was preparing a room in the Father's house for his followers. Native people have a room, Buddhists have a room. One thing that impressed me, but which I readily accepted, was that Jesus said his followers are his brothers and sisters in light, not lesser subjects. He is still the master with authority, but we may become as masters ourselves. Later I found this in the Bible. We are children of the same light, therefore we are equal in that. In his walk as a man, Jesus did not use ritual to heal. He did, however, use ceremonial enactments. These were based upon symbolic cosmic meanings. If you follow this type of learning, you might use enactments. Jesus' way is more involved with enlightenments, transcendence, and changing consciousness. The native way is involved with the same thing, but more through ritual and use of nature. You see, the directions are even in the Bible. The Queen of the South, the stars of the East. There are a lot of symbolic enactments told in the Bible, but in that way they are not the main thing. They are not a central theme. They are just of known side issues. Even though native ways use symbols and ceremonial ritual a lot, it is known that these things are aids along the way and they might transcend their use. Spiritual development is the only thing. This deals in perception and consciousness. We will encounter symbolic meanings of all things if we go to the center. For this reason, I say that no one way is the path or the way. You might be real, yours might be real to you, but there is no one and only religion. Any religion can disappear from the earth. The light would always exist for people to find. So 9, healing is accomplished by discovering your proper flow within the large pattern. The first time that I went to the reservation where Uncle Mark lived was in response to my visionary seeing. I saw that if I drove to the res, the first man that I talked to would take me to ceremonial sweat lodge right away. When my heart felt the time was right, I got into my old blue pickup truck and started driving. The 3 days that I drove, wave after wave of energy kept passing through me, cleansing me. When I reached the borders of the reserve on the 3rd day, I stopped and prayed. I asked for spiritual protection while I was there. I heard an old man say that I would be watched over and wondered who he was. I inwardly saw a very old man sitting in an armchair under a tree and where he lived. I knew that I would meet him in several years. It was Grandfather Foolcrow. As I drove through the res, I knew that if I stopped my truck at the Bureau of Indian Affairs office, the man I was to meet would walk right up to my truck. I parked and waited. Then I heard a man telling me that he was delayed and that if I went to the next town, he would catch up to me soon. This was not as I had seen, so I drove out of town and offered tobacco. I asked for signs that this was the right thing to do. Just as I started driving again, a great bird suddenly swooped over the cab of my truck and flew at eye level ahead of me. It was an eagle. I had never seen a golden eagle before, hadn't been raised in the East. His wingspan seemed to cover one whole lane of the road. He glided ahead of me for about 300 feet, then banked. Slowly he beat his great wings to climb higher. Directly over a housing project, he began to circle. This was where the man lived. As I stepped out of the truck, a woman was getting out of the station wagon with several young boys. She turned to me and said, "Oh, there you are. Can you watch the kids for a while? My husband is delayed at the BIA. The native woman never trusts strangers with their children." I looked at her a moment and said, "Sure." She blinked and really looked at me. Then she realized that she did not know me and yet had asked me to safeguard the most precious thing. When her husband arrived, she told him what had happened and he talked to me. Within moments, he said that he was going to a sweat that evening and that he could take me along. He said that we should leave in a few minutes to get to the woods and prepare for the sweat. Then we sat there over 2 hours. I realized he was testing my patience and simply went off somewhere inside myself. Finally, he sighed and said, "Let's go then." As we were cutting dead trees for the sweat fire, we did not talk. A pheasant wandered through the dry stream bed and stopped a moment. With a gesture of my head, the man indicated the bird. "You know what that is?" he asked. "Yeah, a pheasant," I said. "Nope, white man medicine. Their European animals are replacing ours. It does not belong here. It comes from Europe or from somewhere else, probably. This was the last land with its own animals." The single pheasant summed up everything to this man. The loss of the wild, free life, the loss of traveling with teepees and greeting the sun each morning, the loss of being at home wherever you traveled because you were always at the center of all you perceived, the replacement of native ways with Christianity and capitalism. The bird said it all: pollution, destruction, and natural environment, brainwashing at boarding schools, fear of native religion, language of evil witchcraft. Life in tenement houses was bad water, bad insulation, sickness, and confinement to one piece of land. That one stupid pheasant that too dumb to run away when it saw us summed it up for that man. He looked as though he would like to wring its neck, but he struggled and said, "It is here now." We cut the wood for the fire, cleansed the lodge, and selected the stones, all in signs. As he was passing, used stones out from the lodge pit. He suddenly yelled at me harshly, "If you can't do things right, leave." I looked at the stones in my hand, looked at him, and simply kept on as before. I was being tested again for emotional reaction. I simply kept on as before. When we had everything ready, he sat looking at me. After about 15 minutes, he said, "A lot of people came from all over for this. Demand few to get in the lodge. Some people come, even Indians from northern Canada. We don't let them in. You are going in. You should know it is not common." I know. This is the real thing tonight. I asked him what happened to the lodge and told him that I knew absolutely nothing about it. He said that I would find out. To know that, I would have to go in the lodge. The pipe carrier who would lead the rite arrived. When he saw me, he was puzzled. He knew there would be a guest that night, but he remarked that something was watching over the boy. Anyone under 40 is called a boy. When the stones were brought in, white hot and blessed, the entire flap was closed and we were in total darkness. You could not see your own hand in an inch before your eyes. In the lodge I heard 4 earth-shaking steps and stately dignity, and an ancient buffalo walked into the lodge. He was like a full-size buffalo, but somehow walked into the lodge. He walked to me and snorted in my ear. Then with 4 more earth-shaking steps he left. In the next round the whole lodge lit up inside like a strong moonlight, and we could see each other very clearly. In the third round I suddenly could no longer hear the singing or feeling the intense stream. I reached down to steady myself, but I could not touch the ground. Hard-packed soil was directly under me, but as I sat cross-legged and reached down as far as I could not touch the earth. I did not know if I was floating or had become unstable. In the fourth round, I had a series of visions relating to my role in native religion. This was my first ceremonial sweat. It was not run by a man of great power, just a pipe carrier who had done everything properly. I had heard of a lot of non-natives who read books and then made a lodge. They complain that they do not have visions in the lodge. Some say that after knowing native people for 10 years, they feel they have not gotten very far. Well, it takes at least 30 years to get anywhere. It is more than reading one book. It is for life. When we left the lodge and had poured sage water over our bodies to rinse off the sweat, I began to wonder what had really happened. I stared at the fire pit where we had heated the stones all afternoon. I looked at the altar of mellowed earth and at the shape of the lodge. I gazed at the shallow pit that held the now cooling stones in the center of the lodge. I saw the bucket of cold water that had been in. I looked back and forth between these several times, and I knew that what had happened. By the time I looked around again, everyone had left but the man who had brought me. He was staring at me intensely, probably wondering what I was so absorbed in. Since neither of us had eaten all day, and it was almost midnight, he invited me back to his house for a meal. Back at the housing project, he scrounged some leftovers and threw together a meal. As we ate, he explained that some people came seeking ceremony and found only the physical sweat run by those who were not even medicine men. Some had come to the res for years, but had never been to a real ceremony. Some fell in with those who wanted dogs. Some years later, I was invited to the sunrise sweat by a friend. As we heated the stones, my friend saw me preparing myself and came over. "This is just a sweat," he said, "not a ceremony. I just want to give some white friends a taste of the real thing. To me, this is wrong. If you want people to know what the real sweat is like, have a real sweat. The watered-down version is not a sweat. It is just a sauna." Many years later, my own father was dying of cancer. I had seen that he would die, but not exactly how. I prayed and made ceremony, but could not do anything. My father was resolved to die. So his spirit stubbornly refused that his body be healed. I thought maybe my friend the grizzly dreamer might be able to help. I prayed to the spirit guide to use both and was told what to take to him. When I arrived at the grizzly dreamer's reservation, he greeted me at the door of his house. "You cannot stay today," the spirit told me. "Someone is bringing a loaded pipe. Someone in grave need might bring a pipe already filled on behalf of someone who cannot make the journey themselves because of illness." I reached into the paper sack and took out the filled pipe I had brought. His eyes went wide for a second, but he merely grunted in bear fashion and took the pipe into the bedroom. In a moment he called me to join him, and we smoked the pipe. When I told him the problem, he said he had been heating the stones for the sweat all day, and that the mutual friend would come to be the doorman, someone who passes in the stones and water and closes and opens the entry flap. Once in the sweat, he sang the bear song and I prayed. He confirmed that because my father had firmly resolved to die at the time, nothing could be done. To override his free choice and keep him here forcibly would be infringement against his spirit and a grave wrong. I had to just let him go. To my Then my friend said, "Spirit wants us to use a rattle." He placed the rattle beside me and moved to the back of the lodge. He began to sing again, and I heard the rattle being lifted gently. It began to shake, and with each moment, light green sparks of intense light played over the surface. They flew off into the darkness a little ways. The rattle circled the lodge and then began to doctor me while gentle blows against my body. There is no way to describe what I felt with each blow. I heard my friend singing in the back of the lodge, but needed no confirmation that he had not moved. I believed in spirits. The rattle suddenly was gone, but moments later returned and circled the lodge once more, before setting itself down beside me again. My friend said the spirits had taken the rattle to the hospital where my father lay dying and prepared him for death. The spirit got him into a better consciousness and took him up the mountain. After the sweat, my friend gave me almost a gallon of herbal tea used for cancer. We both knew my father would not take it. My father chose to go and refused all help. Every person deserves the right to die in a manner they choose. After the spirit prepared my father, he began to talk in the Indian way for the first time. He was at the top of the mountain now and could commune telepathically. I had a long talk with him in this way. That night he died. He sent me away to the end and to be alone. About 2 hours later he died. Often you bless the stones as they go into the center pit in the lodge. A neon blue light spread over the surface and then shot into the very heart of each stone, pulsating gently there. The first time I conducted the ceremonial sweat, the light was a pale green, but after that it was blue. I built my lodge on the site of the old native village on the bluff above the river. I did not know this at first. No one has yet discovered the old site. I was led to it by a sphere of blue light. It floated gently before me through the woods, where it hovered, then disappeared as I arrived. Was the perfect circle of young pine trees. The circle opened to the west, my direction. Directly beyond this opening was a huge ancient cedar tree. The perfect place for ceremonial sweat. It was here that I talked with the owl for the first time. You can find dozens of books telling you how to build a physical lodge. I would like to talk about other parts of it. One woman I met recently said she feared sexuality at the sweat because men and women are particularly naked. This is wrong. In the way I was taught, men wear short pants, or the equivalent. Men also wear a t-shirt if there are women present who are not directly family. Women wear a loose cotton dress that covers to the knees. In the real old ways, men and women do not sweat together. Other nations have their own ways. A Lakota man may sweat with his wife or young female relatives who have not reached puberty. Otherwise, men and women do not sweat together. If a medicine man must sweat with a woman to help her, both parties must insist on at least one older woman as a chaperone, preferably several. Nowadays, people are losing respect, the affording of dignity to each other. I followed on Uncle Mark's ways. He did not sweat with women unless doctoring them. If you sing the pipe song in the right way, everyone feels like brothers and sisters at ceremony. You do not think sexual about the sister. If I make ceremonial sweat lodge, I insist on doing all the preparation myself. I quarry the sandstone, I cut the wood, I clean the lodge, I prepare and watch the fire, for a special purpose has been called, such as a request for someone for a special sweat. I make over 400 tobacco offerings strung together. These are tobacco ties, a pinch of tobacco or pipe mixture tied into a tiny pouch, and all the pouches strung together in a continuous line. It takes hours to do this. The 4 rounds of sweat lodge reflect the 4 directions, 4 levels of whole self, 4 stages of human growth, the 4 parts of the fire teachings. The principle of sweat lodge are these. The lodge itself is the shape like a dome of the heavens. It represents the limitation of mortal perception. We live our lives under the dome in the darkness of unknowing. We cannot see beyond it into the ethereal. Under this dome, in spiritual darkness, we seek light and we go beyond limitation. Sometimes the lodge will light up inside. Sometimes the top of the lodge will fall away and there is no lodge beyond you. The night sky beyond is revealed. This reflects that you have transcended, but the contents of the experience often distract from the understandings of nature of the experience. The workings of ceremonial sweat are these. Trees provide us with the fuel for the fire. We each have something similar in us. Trees are called the standing people. Like the trees, we are rooted in the physical. We reach upwards as they do. We reach for the rain of spiritual blessings and for the light. Through this material life way and seeking, we find the ability to focus and concentrate ourselves. This is the intensity needed to transcend. It is the latent intensity found in the dead wood. We begin to gather the dead wood for the sweat fire. We are gathering our focus at the same time, thinking and feeling what is to come in the lodge. We are changing our moods and feelings. This wood is used to heat up the stones. Our intensity is used to change our consciousness. By changing perception through changing our moods and feelings, we prepare for the lodge. We are spending and elevating our consciousness. We are speeding and elevating our consciousness. As the stones begin to heat, they begin to glow, first red, then white. Their particular vibrations at a faster speed. There produce light, first the intensity, red hot stones, then the brilliance of the white hot stones. This is the change that we seek in ourselves. First comes intensity, then harmony. Both are light. In the lodge, we place stones one at a time in the shallow central pit. We invite blessings of the stones as we sprinkle sacred herbs on them. The stones are placed to symbolize the directions, which represent the 4 levels of self. By inviting blessings to the stone, we are inviting the same change to occur in us, as symbolized by the white stones, as we are experiencing that what we wish this to be a spiritual experience. So we invite blessings. In the lodge, we center ourselves around the central theme. When we are all prepared, the one conducting the rite knows. Then he calls for the entryway to be closed, and we are sealed in utter darkness. For a while the stones glow and illuminate the darkness, and we center ourselves in this more and more. After an invocation, prayers, and sacred songs, cool water is splashed on the stones, and the steam hisses and spits. This act is sometimes said to symbolize our prayers raising like steam. I prefer to say it symbolizes the fluid oneness of things, and this is the perception that elevates us once we have speeded consciousness. We are lifted like the steam, not just our prayers. These are fundaments of sweat lodge. The soil removed to make the shallow central pit for the heated stone is broken up finely. Roots and stones are removed, and this softened soil is made into a round mound about 3 feet before the lodge door, between the lodge and the fire pit. This is mellowed earth, the altar upon which we rest our pipes and all sacred things. This is the primal lodge ceremony. The pipe is not necessary for the sweat lodge. It is customary to use it, but not crucial. A buffalo skull is not crucial. Many people have become more absorbed in the visionary content rather than the transcendent nature of the ceremony. When sweat lodge is conducted only in the physical, it is physical renewal like a sauna. You will notice the body change, the intense heat and the steam will produce. That is all. When sweat lodge is conducted as a transcendent ceremony, everyone will change consciousness. It can be quite dramatic. It is said that if you sweat with a man of power, great things can happen, strong things. What is really meant by the word power is the facility to change fundamental perceptions and consciousness. When you attend ceremony conducted by a powerful man, or vision quest with his help, you will have a strong experience. By strong, we also mean fundamental. As someone lives with a strong heart, it is fundamental heart, fundamental deep feelings, not surface emotion. Sometimes when people fast this way, miraculous things happen. Some men fast near each other for solace and comfort through the long cold night. Sometimes in late afternoon as night approaches, man will suddenly disappear. All his sacred things are gone too. From one second to the next, they are just gone. In the morning after sunup, he is suddenly just back again. We say the Spirit took him somewhere to teach him. It might be somewhere else in this world or the spirit world. Power is almost inconceivable to the mortals who have not pierced the dome or the veil separating the world. I know of one butte that a power man actually moved. He was having ceremony and said because of all the nearby mining and the agriculture, the flow around the butte was slightly off. The butte was a long, narrow one running exactly east and west. Everything went very swimming during the ceremony, and then the butte was sitting northwest by southeast. It stayed that way. It stayed that way. I can only tell you what I personally know to be true because I witnessed it. I have also seen objects move over great distance, and in one case also through time. Just the fact that I was taught all of this by 6 voices that turned out to be living flesh and body mystic speaks to unfold powers, not my power, but the power of the capital P, a power with the capital P. I was raised Catholic Christian and was even an altar boy at 11 years old. While at the same time being taught the old native ways, I asked the priest about Moses and Abraham and the voices they heard. The priest said that the people back then were less sophisticated, less technological minded. They implied that only stupid, underdeveloped people could think they heard voices. They implied that only very simple people could talk over distant telepathy and have mystical experiences, or think they did. Some attitudes are changing now. Some for the better, other for the worse, but I think I will stay less technological minded. When I received my long stem ceremonial pipe, I was very devoted. I smoked it at least once a day, making ceremony even if all alone. I like to go to nature areas a lot and found that I preferred a deserted gravel pit where many of the herbs I use still grow. One day, after centering myself through gesturing the directions, I sat on the edge of a bluff overlooking the river. Behind me was a gravel pit and herb field. Beside me was a small stream's cascade in the series of waterfalls to the rivers 60 feet below. As I let myself merge with the oneness of all things, a small head poked over the lip of the bluff. A forked tongue flicked at me, and a snake about a yard long slithered over the edge. I never liked snakes. It came to where I sat, cross-legged, and curled up against my thigh. The snake rested its head on its coil and seemed to doze. I went back to what I had been doing. When I finished, I thanked the snake for teaching me trust. It bobbed its head as slowly, and I slowly stood. It calmly slithered back over the edge of the bluff. Another time, in another part of the herb field, I sat on a small rise of land and made ceremony. It was about 4 in the afternoon. I prayed. I noted the birds often came to me during ceremony, but usually not mammals. I asked if there was any particular reason mammals did not seem to attend my ceremonies. I bent forwards and lowered my head over my pipe as I prayed, closing my eyes for a moment. When I looked up, a red fox stepped from behind a hillock and began to calmly hunt crickets and mice. About 60 feet away from me, it leapt high into the air, pouncing on unintended prey. I watched it hunt for a few moments and called out in a loud voice. I thanked it for coming to my pipe. The fox stopped, looked all around. It seemed not to see me. It resumed hunting. I sang a sacred song loudly. It seemed not to notice at the least. I prayed. The fox wandered part of the herbal field hunting. I called out to it once more at the end of my pipe, thanking it for showing me there was no reason for mammals not to come to my ceremonies. I cleaned the bowl of my pipe and gently separated the bowl from the stem. In a split second, the fox whipped its head around and saw me. Within a half moment, it was a red dot on the edge of the distant woods. During ceremony, I had been inseparable from the rest of the spirits in all things. I later learned to use this to stay unnoticed by passers-by when I did not want interruption. There are powerful and mysterious things. When I was 16, after I had accepted to continue the learnings, I was granted some looks into the future before setting aside all I had learned. I saw many things to be, including a marriage and a woman who I would meet when I left the res. I saw a man who would wish me ill and those who would be relatives. I saw what the first two old men would try to do to me. I immediately began to lament and mourn. Suddenly I heard a new group of people talking to me over the distance. Until now, my teachers had prevented anyone from listening in to our talks. Obviously, this now was open-ended. Who are you? Why are you sad? How can we reach you? Who is hurting you that you mourn so sad? I said to them in symbolic language. They tied my hands and my feet, and they threw me in the river. I cannot get out. I am drowning. Many years later, I discovered that one part of this group was in a sweat lodge near where Uncle Mark lived. They were they were organizing physical search parties to drag the river by the sweat, thinking this was the spirit of a missing youth talking. A medicine man looked into it and told them not to do that. I was not drowned in my physical river. One of the men who talked with me again the next day when I described how difficult it was living amongst the dominant society and yet knowing the old ways. They said they would adopt me as a son in the Lakota way and be my Lakota family. This summer when I visit the old man, I will camp next to you in the big powwow and they will start to be relatives. I was not so. The woman, I told her that I was not where she was, and this was strange to me. She did not understand. I had no words to tell her that I knew she was speaking and hearing me 12 years in my future. I knew that my position in time and space was different to hers. The woman turned out to be Fool's Crow's daughter, Marie. 12 years later, I camped next to her. She treated me as a beloved son. I could not bring myself to talk to anyone about this time talking that happened and never have. I could accept that I was to talk to people far away, but through time as well. I made up my mind that one of the tasks I would set myself would be to understand this if possible one day. This time talking has happened several times. I conversed with someone over the distance and knew their time and location in space. Only one man seems aware of this ability, but I never discuss it with him. It is something so distract that if you know, you know. If you do not, words will not help much. I see Grandpa Fool's Crow do an old-time ceremony once. A woman came who was ill, and non-native doctors could not help her except to treat symptoms with pain pills. Grandpa had told me that he would be driving to Rapid City that day, but early in the morning he told me that we had to wait, as someone was now coming for help. When the woman arrived, Grandpa made ceremony. During this, he took a single eagle feather and brushed her down. Then he tapped the feather against the bowl, and a live caterpillar fell out of the end of the feather. He asked me to burn it. He said this was what someone put in her to make her ill. It was bad medicine. I do not believe the actual caterpillar was in her. I believe that the bad medicine was taken out of her, made into a caterpillar. The ability to use powers, have visions, be in ceremonial consciousness, in a fundamental perception, is taught to us through learned people or through spiritual guidance. By feeling the mood of the learned one, we begin to sense what that consciousness is like. It begins with mood and feeling. Telling the experience is meant to help us capture the feeling for ourselves. I have written, as I have, to void one mood that everyone seems to write about. You should know that there is more than one kind of consciousness or perception. There is more than one hue. In my life, I have witnessed many things. I have wept in joy at the beauty before me, and laugh in joy at life's simplest things many people take for granted. I tell my experience, but not what I felt. When you have experiences, your heart will sing. When you participate in spirit in all things, you have a certain attitude and consciousness. The fairness of life becomes clear to you. Life is fair. We have just forgotten the rules. A right or a good act is one which is in accord with the Holy Spirits in all things, to be able to know the movement and therefore what is whole and complete. You must arrive at inner balance. This comes through the fire teachings. Wrong acts or evil acts are those contrary to the wholeness of spirit in all things. Even in the Bible, this is what is meant by the original sin. Adam and Eve were without shame. They were told to be fruitful and multiply. Sex is certainly not a sin. Adam and Eve were diligently practicing being fruitful before they ate the fruit of the tree of knowledge. Rather, the tree reveals what is good and what is evil. It is knowledge, the right and the wrong. If everything is created by the Creator and only He exists, then creation came into being as a manifestation of the Creator's intent. It is the Spirit in all things, the Creator within His creation. If everything is perceived as manifestations of the Creator and imbued with Spirit, there can be no perception of right and wrong. Act because everything is within the movement of the Spirit in all things, Holy Spirit. In other words, before eating the fruit, mankind could not perceive right from wrong because everything was within the Holy Spirit in all things, and therefore only good could be perceived. When people ate the biblical fruit and could therefore perceive right and wrong, they committed the original sin of removing themselves from the flowing Holy Spirit in all things. They discovered isolation and ego, for they suddenly became embarrassed for the first time because they were naked. In using power, we follow the flowing movements of the sacred spirit in all things. From understanding the actions and movements of the ethereal breath of God, we understand something moving in us as well. Against this spiritual movement, we will weigh our acts and motivations while slowly growing more whole and complete. If these are within the patterns and the flowing oneness, they are proper acts. For this reason, when we are doctoring someone, we can see the illness as an intrusion or an interruption in the flowing movement of the person. We can tell where the discord lies and assess how best to correct it. We can do this because we understand how the flow should be. This holistic approach is used the world over by natural people living with the land and with the spirit in all things, by helping the person to achieve or re-achieve their proper flowing within the larger pattern. Healing is accomplished, as the body can grow ill from lack of nourishment or improper diet. So too can lack of improper nourishment from the heart and soul cause us to be imbalanced or physically ill. Healing takes place from the spirit realm. Before the physical healing can take place, the patient sometimes needs to draw closer to spirit. For all the adventures and mysteries happening, nothing strikes me as important as balance, harmony, centering, generating light. From the deepest center we can emerge along any spoke of the wheel. All of these happenings are types of stones in the great wheel. With repeated journeys to the center, we might begin to understand the nature of the medicine wheel of our own lives. We must get past our illusions and preconceived ideas. So I'll finish up tomorrow. I'll try to get this book done tomorrow.